Assessment is one of the most important elements in the induction year. In this film, we follow two NQTs during their second term's observation.
Quite used to being observed because on the PGC last year, I had the class teacher in most of the time, I had tutors coming 3 or 4 times, and I've had the mentor in this year, so I do get quite used to it actually.
I'm feeling okay, quite positive, but obviously worried because I want it to be good, I need it to be good. It's like my third observation and I've never been observed for a numeracy lesson before, and I'm keen to make sure that it's as good as the other observations.
I feel a bit nervous because first of all the photocopy wasn't working yesterday at 5 o'clock and they were going to send an engineer out. The snow as well today is a bit of a problem. It started snowing in the afternoon yesterday. Probably going to be excited all day. So something I've got to be a bit careful about. But I like snow myself, so I'm a bit excited as well.
We're going to hear expert advice from author, lecturer and induction expert Sarah Bubb.
You just do what you would normally do for any lesson, except bear in mind that in an observed lesson, you want to come across as best as you can. So you want to teach a lesson that is going to show yourself at your best. You're going to bear in mind all those issues that were raised on previous observations, so that if pace was identified as an issue last time, you want to make sure that pace is really snappy this time.
David Freeborn left his sales job as a headhunter in IT recruitment and took a PGCE. Now he's in his second term of teaching a Year 3 class at Heavers Farm Primary, a 2-form entry school in South London.
I've got literacy this morning and I was looking at the literacy strategy and it's quite bland really. I was thinking, how can I kind of jazz this up? So we invented an alien yesterday. His name's Bingo. And today we are writing instructions, so I'm going to say that the alien wants to know how to make a cup of tea in the correct order. So that's what we're going to be doing this morning. I'm going to go and find a kettle now. I've had a word with the secretary and she said as long as she's had a cup of tea, then I might be able to borrow her kettle, so here we go.
I feel that David is finding this term much easier than the first term. He's built up a really good relationship with the children in his class, and he's supported by all the members of the staff. And his character, I mean, he's just a great character.
Thank you very much. That's one thing I've done. I've got a spoon and a tea bag now. Good morning, sir.
Sandra Abdullahi studied for a B.Ed after leaving her office work to move into teaching. 3 years on, Sandra is now a Year 3 NQT at Woodside Junior, a 4-form entry school in South London.
When you're assessed, you should try and be the best that you can possibly be. You need to show yourself how good you can be, because every day you come in and you get bogged down with like live stuff as well. You don't know how well you're doing because there's no one there watching you, telling you you're doing a good job. So you do need someone to come in and say, well, you know, maybe you need to do this or think about this. Right, we've got to go.
Sandra's a wonderful, lively person who loves the children to death. And I think because of that, because they see that, she's able to get away with quite a bit, in that they will do anything for her.
I'm a bit worried actually because I haven't managed to do everything I wanted to do, so I don't know where I'll just have to find the time as we go along, I suppose.
With an observation, you will do a lesson plan that is thorough. That's not necessarily cheating if you don't normally do one in such detail, but it's kind of giving the observer insight into what's going on in your head.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I've done everything before she comes, because otherwise as soon as the children come in there's no time to do anything. I have to go and photocopy, so.
People have lots of concerns about being observed, and that's perfectly understandable. There isn't any lesson that you can actually say is typical. And as soon as somebody else is in the room, it definitely becomes untypical.
I'm going to try and get to the photocopier now before it gets a bit too busy, otherwise I find myself doing it at break and then lunchtime.
Some people get worried about their children going really quiet because their children get inhibited because it's the deputy head who's doing the observation or some authority figure. And they need to be thinking about that and thinking, okay, I'm going to have a lively starter.
Now, Bingo, as you remember, just parked on the grass outside. He said, when I come back to you, and he said, it's going to be a couple of days' time, when I come back, I want to know how to make a cup of tea. It's always quite nervous in observation with somebody sat there watching you, specifically to find out how you're doing. And if especially if it's once a half term as well, then if it does go badly, then perhaps that might be her impression for the rest of the half term. Learning intentions there, I can write instructions in the correct order.
As a result of my last observation on David, this time I'll be looking for very specific things, like be making sure that he sustained the work that he has initiated on behaviour. I'm also going to be making sure that he's thinking more carefully about self-assessment. He wasn't using self-assessment at all the last time that I did a formal assessment.
It's over now, don't worry. Shh, a few too many people talking here. Bingo's got a microphone in here.
A microphone?
He wants to see which children are doing the right thing.
What do we know about the numbers that are multiples of 4? Special thing we know about them. Multiples of 4, they're all what? What are they? Grace?
Even.
They're always even numbers. Always even numbers. So if I...
What I'm going to be looking for in Sandra's lesson is how she's moved on with the target that I set her last time I observed her. And that was to be very clear about the level of the children's learning and to make sure that she's starting from what they know and then taking them forward.
Who's with me so far? Right, okay then, so that's the counting in threes, we've done that, we've been doing that for days. What we're going to do today is we're going to do something a bit different. We haven't done it before. Each table has a different activity. First of all, on this table, we've got out the hoops, okay, right? And what we've got to do is a pile of numbers, and you've got to sort them. Still quite nerve-wracking, because a lot of people don't realise that if you don't pass this year, then you can't teach ever again. You do need to, pull out the stops. You do need to make sure it's good what you're doing, because otherwise you could find yourself with no job and like 3 years training down the drain. But I try not to think about it too much, just try and get on with it. And last but not least, this group here are going to work with Mrs. Fox, and they get to play bingo.
Bingo's never actually done this himself. If we give him too much and in the wrong order, it's going to taste awful. So are these in the correct order, Lewis?
Yeah.
Brilliant. And if they weren't, would it make sense?
Yeah.
No. So from scratch, we have got a whole set of instructions for bingo for making a cup of tea in the correct order, which is what we want to. I've given a tutor a copy of my lesson plan, so hopefully I'm going to try and stick to that as much as I can. There's not too many notes. I know what I have to be doing by a certain time. How long to keep talking for? Perhaps 20. I think 20 minutes is enough to keep talking and do a bit of an activity. I want bingo to come tonight and say, right, I'm going to scan all these with my super eyes and I'm going to take them home with me. There's a hand up if you do not understand what we have to do. Are you sure I'm not going to get mad? Right, excellent.
Now remember, how many of each were there to start off with? Yeah, right, you need to make, you're trying to make 13. Add 3, that's how many?
9.
9, right, okay. I generally try and make sure that I know what I'm doing, and I really try and internalise it before I start, because it's not always good to follow the plan to the T, because what actually happens in the lesson and what happens in the plan are often two different things. The children will just take you wherever they want you to go. That's 12, but we need to get to 13. Okay, add 2.
Take off 1.
No, you can't take off 1. It's either got to be a 3 or a 2, so we can't use that one. Right, try again, go.
You need to plan things in detail so that you manage to complete all parts of the lesson. Because what often happens is that people just miss out the plenary at the end, which is a kind of bit of a no-no.
What time do we usually go back on a Friday? Do we have a longer lesson on a Friday? Sure, I think. Okay, what we'll do is, listen, okay.
Be very clear about the learning objective. What do you want the children to achieve during the lesson? So by the end of the lesson, what are you looking for?
Right, what we're going to do is this idea of self-assessment. You feel that by the end of this lesson, you can write instructions in the correct order. I always do the smiley face.
There are some lessons that fit that style of showing progress better than others. So go for a lesson that actually shows what you can do.
Because unfortunately, it is time to stop.
After the observation, I think that's the time when you get the most out of that dialogue with your induction tutor, or whoever is observing you is the thing that's going to help you move on.
So how did you feel that the lesson went?
I think it was good that they had the different activities to do, and they were all slightly different in their own right. But they would take it in turns to do it, and they were helping each other, and it was just nice to see them working in that way as opposed to just sitting there with the textbook and copying out often.
Great, yeah. Lots of good things about the lesson. Pace, good start to the lesson, really interesting that when they came in they were all motivated straight away. Appropriate time spent on your mental starter and your main lesson as well. If I'm just being really practical, I think some of the groups, you gave out all the instructions for the 5 groups all in one time. The children sort of listened to their instruction and then they went on and did their game. When they moved on, then it was,
what do we do?
What do I do? How do you think you could have overcome that?
You could have just walked around the whole class walk the class round, because we've done.
Yeah. Well, I would have thought another way would have been to put perhaps a set of instructions on the table.
How do you think it went?
The actual content of the lessons, I think I'm a bit more open to taking a few risks and things like that.
It worked, because what I really liked in amongst your chat is that you actually use bingo as an incentive as well on the behaviour front.
Yeah.
A few too many children talking here. Remember, bingo has a camera in here.
I was thinking, I know, it just sounds a bit silly that looking back.
I don't think it did,
actually.
I thought it was quite nice that you sort of.
Because I could see him looking around for
bingo.
this camera, and I thought I didn't want to really introduce that idea.
Now, when you actually got to referring back to the learning intention again, you're talking about writing instructions. You asked, are these in the right order? And Lewis said to you, yep. And you said, would they make sense if they were not in the right order? And he said, yep. And you said, no. When he said yep to you, what do you think you should have said?
Why do you think?
Yeah.
I know, I didn't. I thought that was going to be another 10 minutes.
Yeah, I know. You were thinking about pace, weren't you?
Yeah.
What do you think you could have done better?
So maybe I could have explained the tasks a bit better, and maybe, I don't know, because I don't actually know what the children got from it. I don't know if it was directly linked to being able to count on in steps of 3.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. They would be 2 of the things that I would be talking to you about. And the first one, which is about what did you want them to learn? Your second one is always to have a plenary or a review of the learning. This is what we're learning today. And then at the end of it, who thinks they've learnt this? And then that will help them to achieve their own, to look at their own learning, to evaluate their own learning. And, so it'll give you a better idea as to where you think they need to go.
There will be plenaries from now on. I didn't realise, so.
But it was great. It was a very brave lesson.
And yes, your plenary was lovely because you gave the children an opportunity to share their work, and you also relayed it directly to giving instructions to your actors, which was great. I think you could have taken it on that one step by referring it directly back to that learning intention, but because although you referred to it, you weren't tightly referring to it all the way through that process.
I thought I'd gone a bit too much referring to it.
No, I don't think you did. So what we need to do is unpick why you feel like that and why I feel differently, and I think the best way to do that is to actually give you the opportunity to go and see someone else doing it. So that you've got that point of reference. And then we have that conversation.
Right, no problem.
All right.
Self-assessment's the new trendy buzzword, so I really ought to do a bit more research. I need to find out a bit more about why it's so important to get that thing on the board and get it in their books, and at the end of it self-assess. That's the whole idea, because every school does it differently.
Observations are frustrating, but at the same time I knew I was being observed, so maybe I should have just tailored it more to like an observation kind of lesson where it's clear to see that there's an introduction and a mental oral starter and a plenary, but I know now, so I'll just have to apply it to my everyday.